This is going to be your first tutorial covering the Arduino Uno. And it is important to note that what is following in this tutorial series can be applied to any of the Arduino platforms, such as the Dwell Nove or the Arduino LilyPad. So let's get started by asking the question, what is an Arduino? Well, an Arduino is a microcontroller, and what a microcontroller does is it controls things. It controls electrical systems. It makes the decisions based upon inputs and outputs to what comes into the ports here. As you see, there's many inputs and outputs on the Arduino, and it is also capable of serial communication, sending commands basically over the USB cable to the computer, and then that could make the computer, allow the computer to make decisions, or the computer could use the Arduino as a game controller and stuff like that. But let's introduce you to the actual working parts of the Arduino and what you need to know about the Arduino in order to get started. The Arduino is capable of many inputs and outputs, as I've already stated before. If you look right, make the Arduino to where the Arduino Uno is upright like this, and we're going to cover what the different ports do. If you look above the top here, you have ports 0 through 13. And what these are capable of is digital input and output. They can either be on or they can be off. Or they can have an input of 1 coming in or input of 0. It is 0 or 1. It's yes or no, generally. Now there is an exception. Certain pins have what we call a tilde beside them. It looks kind of like a wave. Those are called pulse width modulation pins, and what they're capable of is sending a signal that mimics an analog signal that it has a value of 0 to 255, and that allows the person or the programmer programming the microcontroller to drive things such as servo motors that require an analog output. If you look at the Arduino down towards the bottom here, you have analog pins. They are called A0 through A5, I believe. It's 6 of them. And the importance of these pins is they allow analog input. They allow input from values from 0 to 255, or no, 0 from to 1023 on the Arduino. That's the values that come into the analog input ports when you're programming. If you look to the side of that, there's also many different power pins, such as 5 volts, 3.3 volts, their outputs. You see grounds, and you also see the voltage in, which is how you could plug it in. And there's also a barrel jack to where you could have a barrel jack to a battery plugging directly into the Arduino. A couple other things that we'd like to cover is that the button right here is called the reset button, and what that does is when you push this button here, it automatically restarts the Arduino. If you look down towards where your voltage pins are at the 5 volts, 3.3 volts voltage in, there is a pin that is called reset. What you can do with this is you can actually reset the Arduino via, say, your own button that you put off somewhere. So you make something that you can't quite get to the Arduino from where you are. Say it's the Arduino's in a case. In that case, you could have a sensor going off a button, and then you push that button, and it triggers the Arduino to restart. You will also notice that pins 0 and 1 on this have a TX and RX beside it. Now, when you're programming the Arduino, you will realize that the TX and RX lights on here will flash, and what that means is that it's communicating with the computer. One has to do with the communication coming down from the computer, the other has to do with communication going back up to the computer over serial. And you may want to take that into consideration whenever you're designing something for the pin 0 and 1. You may want to try to avoid it because it is connected to the TX RX. And there's actually a way that you can take the Arduino and use these pins to program other microcontrollers, but we won't get into that. And one last thing that I would like to point out about the Arduino and what happens in the board alone is that it has a pin on pin 13. There is an LED that is like automatically built in, and what that allows is for you to be able to test your board. Basically, if you ever think that it's fried or you messed it up, you try pin 13 to see if it works. That is like if pin 13 doesn't work, something's wrong with your Arduino, because the LED is soldered directly to the pin, and that allows for debugging. Anyway, that is it for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we'll actually get started working with the Arduino.